Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Tuan Nur Aisyah Kristina binti Tuan Sharifuddin, matrix number AA201085. And we are from Group 1. And for this assignment, our topic is about inertia switch. So now I'm going to tell you what is an inertia switch. Inertia switch is a switch that will be activated when an abrupt change of velocity happens from the item which the inertia switch is mounted. The inertia switch is designed to cut off the fuel pump from supplying gasoline to the mechanical system during an accident. The aim of this is to forestall the electrical fuel pump from continuing to pump the explosive gasoline after an accident, or else this will be resulting in a fuel system leak. So the inertia switch will kill the circuit in a quick motion with the help of the magnetized ball bearing inside it. To know the whereabouts of your inertia switch location, you can just read your manual book and it will show you the location of the inertia switch that your car have. Problem statement. The most serious problem of inertia switch is the gravity effect upon the inertia operating unit. Next is the inertia switch only operate under foot brake slowdown condition when the unit is mounted on an automobile. Next is it has shock and vibration sensitive switch. The position inertia device which perform switch mechanical action when inertial acceleration is sensed. It can automatically act and be connected to relating equipment under an inertial impact to perform relating operations. Recently, the inertia switch is employed widely like an inertia protection switch within the automobile field. When a car contains a collision or a severe impact, the inertia protection switch activates related equipment to chop off the facility supplied to a petroleum pump, so an engine is forced to be off. Consequently, the accident loss and therefore the possibility of a fireplace are reduced. It can protect the car. Currently, the widely used inertia switch includes a mechanical assembly structure and is rather large and heavy. Furthermore, it includes many gears, slide blocks, springs, and therefore the light it needs a huge amount of manpower, much time, cost, which is very expensive. Automotive occupant restraint system in prior times used a distributed array of inertia operated mechanical switches to sense the onset of a collision and trigger the activation of the restraint system. More recently, the distributed arrays of mechanical switches are replaced by one or more electronic acceleration sensors working in cooperation with a microprocessor and complicated software. The sensors provide electronic signals proportional to vehicle acceleration. The microprocessor assesses the frequent and rapid changes within the vehicle acceleration and determine from this whether a crash is occurring that needs the actuation of the occupant restraint system. Nowadays, vehicle manufacturers are increasingly employing electronic control units which operate in response to signals from inertia switch impact sensors. Electronic controls are already common both in door locking and fuel management systems. This move to electronic processing of sensor signals and therefore the use of driver stages or relays to perform power switching has prompted the event of smaller and low power switches and transducers which are frequently required to be sufficiently small to be directly mountable. This invention relates to an inertia switch impact sensor for vehicle crash detection, for the interruption or initiation of electrical currents like those controlling fuel flow and central door locking unit.
Next, issues of the new technology. There are three primary issues that a fuel injectors will run onto, which is becoming closed, being leaky, or they will leak. Other issues such as computer errors, failing sensor can cause the fuel injector to end incorrectly, but these are not a result of failing injectors. Okay, next, let's go to the first issue, which is closed fuel injector. It's not easy to diagnose to fuel as a symptom. Its cause can be similar to bad parts plug or ignition coil, meaning one of the cylinders is not firing. If a fuel injector becomes fully closed, it will likely have to be removed from the vehicle and be professionally cleaned. Fuel injection cleaners will not be able to clear the clutch, as they can't pass through at all. The second issue is dirty fuel injection. If fuel injection can still pass through the injectors, but not the proper amount, they will generally be considered dirty. Dirty fuel injector will affect the flow rate of the fuel, which can result in poor idling, steadying, hard starting, or sputtering, which reduce your car's ability to effectively accelerate. While some gas additive injector cleaners may help reduce to wear out in the injectors, the only way to clean them and restore performance is to remove them and use the proper chemicals and equipment. The last issue is leaking fuel injectors. If the fuel injectors are leaking externally, you should not drive your vehicle. While a leaking injectors will likely cause issues similar to that of a dirty one, you will often to be able to smell gas under the hood. Externally, leaking injectors pose a fire risk and need to be completely replaced. Inertia switch were first introduced in 1983 on 30 March by Peter R. Jetman with David W. Kick. The inertia switch is named inertia switch device, and it was comprised an inertia mass which is movable from a rest position when the device is subjected to an applied acceleration or deceleration in a horizontal plane. The type of this inertial switch is grand. In 1983, on July 26, a new inertial switch was invented by Peter R. Jetman with Alan D. Thomas. 1 year after that, Peter R. Jetman with Paul P. Stratton created an inertial switch impact sensor that is on the date November 2, 1984. Next, the new technology which inertial sensor was filed by Peter D. Allen with Peter R. Jetman. The inertial sensor was filed on May 4, 1987, and the date of patent was on March 28, 1989. On 30 October 1989, acceleration responsive circuit for A20 vehicle equipment has been introduced. The creators of this technology are Alan D. Thomas and Hosman Kalami. Acceleration responsive circuit is provided including an electronic accelerometer having an analog electrical signal output representative of detected acceleration. Next year, electric switch has been introduced, and electric switch 11 has contact 12 and 13 which are initially closed by activating means 14. The eventing provide again means 22 to bias the switch again reopen of the contact during at least an initial period, which is useful if the activating means that does not operate for long enough for the electrical switch to assume its stable closed position. The date file is on June 6, 1999. On July 11, 1996, Brian Kennevold was created a technology which is vehicle steering sensor device. A sensing device conveniently and accurately produces electrical signal representative of the direction. Inertial switch and mountain therefore has been introduced in May 26, 1998 by Peter Jetman. Various improvements are disclosed for an inertial switch device. Next, in the year 2001, Abdulrazak Meadows and Brian Johnson will create torque sensing apparatus and method. And lastly, fuel level sensor using rotating angel sensor attached to float on rotating arm has been filed in 2005 by Alan Dollars Thomas with Brian Johnson.
So now I'm going to present the methodology of inertial switch. Other term of inertial switch is acceleration switch. The typical operating principle of inertial switch is the use of mass as a sensing feature. Sufficiently high acceleration disrupts the mass in a way that it will open the switch contact and by the action of a mechanical connection. One of the most worldwide consumer application for this inertial switch is in the vehicle system. There, they shut off the fuel pump if the vehicle is in a collision, thus this reducing and minimizing any fuel leakage and fire hazard. A violent acceleration upward or downward in the cylindrical case will not activate the switch unless a crash with the attendant of deceleration will operate it. Next is the technical method of inertial switch. Automotive inertia sensors usually attached to a fuel pump control, electronic, and sit somewhere in the dash panel. This will be explained by Isaac later. So, they even have a type that has a manual reset button. Inside this device, there is usually a ball that easily moves away from a rest position, which by the time the crash happens, it will move from rest to a setting that has its triggering mechanism to open a switch to activate the protection system. There is usually a cantilever link coming from the plunger towards the engine control that will signaling it to power down during a fuel pump. So this will enable the EV to read its position to a point where it can avoid accidents or other fuel hazard. There is no other mechanism out there that is able to automatically lock the fuel pump and avoid oil leaks toward the engine that preventing fire and later hazardous risk. If this situation happened to you, what should you do to reset the switch? So the things that we will need is owner's manual, that's all. So the first thing first, you must turn off the engine and keluarkan kunci. Open the hood bahagian depan and inspect for any fuel leaks. And if you don't see any wet spots, be mindful of the strong aroma of the gas leak. This is also an indicator or a fuel leak. After that, check all of it and go around the car and see if there are any fuel leaks around the fuel line or even the tank itself. After finish all the inspection, look for the inertia switch. Once you found it, look for the reset button and continue pressing the switch for 15 seconds. Lepas tu, turn the ignition key for 5 seconds and turn back off. Repeat this 3 times. This is to allow the fuel pressure to build within the system. So, after that, let your car run for about a minute and it's done. Dah boleh balik.
Next, I will talk about the concept of inertia switch. The inertia switch is help disconnect the power to the fuel pump when the car is involved in an accident, thus preventing a serious fire. The crash inertia was used to cause the switch. When the crash happened, the inertia switch needed to be reset. The inertia switch will reset by simply pushing the red button on the switch. The switch could also be manually pushed to turn off the fuel pump, which work nicely for turning off the fuel pump and servicing the fuel switch mean of the type response to the rate of deceleration or acceleration. Generally use a magnet and a ball or rig of a ferromagnetic material serving as an intermass and further rapid response to the collapse. The switch means of this character, however, tends to respond to shock or impact of the degrees which are unlikely to invite a serious injury of the vehicle. On the other hand, respond to an actually collision condition through detection of forceful contact between a part of the vehicle body and an obstruction, but are not fully acceptable because of the appreciable delay in achieving the protector pair or knitting.
Assalamualaikum guys. So today I will explain about the design of inertia switch. An inertia switch comprising a cylindrical housing having side walls and a bottom wall, a flat cylindrical magnet adjacent bottom wall, and insulated therefrom by a nylon insert, a contact rod passing through and projecting through side walls and insulated therefrom by insulating jackets, contact rod passing through and electrically connected to cylindrical magnet, a spider spring attached to the side walls with a retainer ring and bolts, spring provided with a permanent set, a suspended mesh mounted up on the scope of the invention, therefore should not center of the spider ring and maintained by the set of the spring above the ends of the spring. Suspended mesh consisting of a contact stud and a ring magnet, contact stud mounted on one side of spring and ring magnet mounted on the other side of spring. Both contact stud and ring magnet being insulated from spring by insulating washers and contact stud and ring magnet before being in electrical contact. Ring magnet being on the side of the spring adjacent cylindrical magnet, and so magnetized that the lower surface of the ring magnet is of opposite polarity from the upper surface of the cylindrical magnet. A a longitudinal slot in the sidewall of the housing, a thread bore perpendicular to said slot and located in said sidewall, and an adjusting bolt is said threaded door for adjusting the spring force in spider spring and the position of said suspended mesh relative to the cylindrical magnet. To locating the inertia switch. In the event of an accident, an inertia switch may trip, isolating fuel pump operation. Once the switch has tripped, it must be reset before attempting to restart the engine. The inertia switch is located behind the trim on the left-hand side of the vehicle, forward of the front door post, below the fascia. A finger access hole in the trim allows the driver to reset the switch. And lastly, how the switch works. The switch operates in the following manner. In both embodiments of the invention, the ball 19 is drawn to the lowest portion of the recess 18 bytes permanent magnet. If the switch is accelerated to the right, for example, in a direction transverse to the axis of the magnet, the inertia of the ball tends to cause it to roll upward in the recess 18 to the left. To do this, the acceleration has to be sufficient to cause the ball to roll upwards out of the recess against the attraction of the magnet in the magnetic field, existing beyond the end wall of the extension. If the force of this acceleration is great enough and of sufficient duration, the ball in figure 1 will be arrested by the circular electrode 12. At this moment, the ball will close an electrical circuit so that a current could flow from lead 15 through the circular electrode to the ball through the retaining electrode to lead 16. In a like manner, the ball in figure 3 will be arrested by the upper case. At this moment, the ball will close an electrical circuit so that a current could flow from the uppercase 26 to the ball to the lowercase element 24. The embodiment in figure 3 needs no leads as it will be mounted in a mounting similar to a standard fuse holder so that the uppercase and the lowercase element will make separate electrical contacts with the holder.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Rahman bin Sajwali and my matrix number is 201013. So today I want to discuss about the advantages and disadvantages of inertia switch. As we know, inertia switch is the safety system in cars. Inertia switch was created nowadays to save people's life. As we know, every system that been created by human has its advantages and disadvantages, so that we discuss. So there is 6 advantages for inertia switch. First, provide greater safety during an accident. Second, prevent the fuel leaks. Third, prevent car from created fire hazard if a fuel line damage. Fourth, prevent car from explosion. Fifth, the safety of the other drivers also increase because I have seen that inertia switch can prevent car from explosion. Sixth, decrease the accident cases. So that's all for the advantages of inertia switch. Next, there is 4 disadvantages of inertia switch. First, sometimes it fails and causes problems with the drivability of the vehicle. Second, driver need always to press the reset button if the system was not function properly. Third, engine will suddenly stop while driving if the inertia switch was broken. Fourth, inertia switch have in modern cars but don't have in old cars. So here we know it is important for us to know about the advantages and disadvantages of inertia switch, so we can give some ideas to the engineers to improve the systems. The engineers also need to find a way to solve the problems. Hereby, the driver's safety will be more secure in the future. That's all from me. Thank you.
In conclusion, inertia switch was first invented in 1983, and until now, the inertia switch is still being operated. For example, the inventors that take part is Peter R. Jackman, David Crick, Alan Douglas Thomas, and Hodgman Calamy. Besides that, it is having Crick based on Newton's first law that states every object will remain at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to the change is state by the action of an external force. This is normally taken as the definition of inertia. Basically, inertia switch is one of modern technology that helps disconnect the power to the full pump when the car is involved in accident, thus preventing a serious fire. Inertia switch can be found in most cars, especially those that use full injection. Its main purpose is to prevent any dangerous full leaks to occur when you get into an accident. That's all from us. Thank you.